Welcome, everyone, to the Firing Demand podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by Burak Yolga. Now, Ken, we just got done recording this interview, and it was absolutely wonderful. Burak is he's a logistics expert, and when I think about 2020 and 2021, logistics has been full of challenges, and I find that having a good logistics person as part of your team is so crucial. And, I used to, and we'll get into this in the episode, but I used to self-book freight, and working with Brock and his team has been wonderful. And so, I don't know, I thought it was an awesome episode. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. It was a really good episode. We deep dive in logistics and freight. Here it is in May of 2021. There's just all kinds of stuff going on with Amazon, inventory restrictions, you name it. We covered a lot of that in the episode. A couple things that stood out to me that, I think what the listeners are really going to like. Burak, this is the first guest we've had on twice. And so if this tells you how much we rely on Burak and we like him, it's a lot. He covers why is shipping so expensive right now. He covers the cheapest way to currently ship, which is interesting. And lastly, he touched on something that David, you're always harping on, is know your numbers. Like, freight is getting so expensive now that you really need to know your numbers and consider, like, do you ship this way? Do you ship that way? What are your margins like? And is this product relevant? The episode has a ton of value.
Welcome to the show, Brock. How are you doing?
Thank you guys for having me back. I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Very well, very well. Now, I have to say, 2020 was a rough year. It certainly presented some challenges as it related to just navigating the marketplace. There was a lot of backlog. Shipping was challenging. And now we are into 2021, and similar to the president gives a State of the Union. Tell me the state of freight in summer of 2021.
I mean, I don't even know where to start, David. We thought that 2020 was a tough year, but it seems 2021 is even harder for most of the companies. We can talk about a lot of different issues, especially if you're sourcing products in Asia or in Europe. A lot of shortage in the material, the labor cost, inflation, the raw material shortage is one of the biggest problem now. The price is really increasing. I think everybody is kind of suffering for the cost increasing, and a lot of Chinese factories or companies in Asia, they need to increase their prices. So every company is looking for alternative sourcing channels, like in Asia, as well as maybe in a different part of Asia, like India, Bangladesh, or like in East Europe, Turkey, Russia, and other countries. When it comes to the buying habits, it has been changing definitely. And the last point to that is the transportation, the logistics, where it comes even like more complicated. Not only the pricing issue at the moment, but as well as the space issue. So 2020 was a difficult year because no one ever had the pandemic experience before. International businesses really suffered, and most of the air companies, or air freight, almost was about to stop. Like 80 to 90% capacity went down, so the price increased a lot. And most of the people who used to ship the products by air, then they changed their shipping methods to the ocean. And then we had an overbooking situation in the ocean freight. So it still continues this problem since 2020. And right after the Chinese New Year, we had a big problem with the cost increasing. I can explain this way. The last year, per kilogram, the CDDP fast shipment, we say 25 days about delivery time, was about $1.3 to $1.5. Now it's almost $2 to $2.2. So basically, most of the companies who are selling on Amazon, they need to stay in the competition, and they basically they cut their own margin and the profit. So because of the increase in this cost, full container was about like $3,000. Now it's almost like $10,000. And there are a lot of things. The issue with the supply chain actually continues, and it seems end of May almost, and then it still has not been solved, and it's kind of getting worse before the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Burak. I'm excited to have you on a second time. This is it's pretty awesome. So a question for you. You talked about it a little bit from David's question, but why is shipping so expensive right now? It's almost like you mentioned for full containers. It's almost like the price has tripled since like last year or the year before. What factors are causing this price to? It's not like we lost a bunch of boats. We don't have the boats. It's the fuel. I mean, what are the factors? Why is it so expensive?
Actually, Ken, it's a great question. Sometimes I'm also asking the same question to myself, and unfortunately, there is no there is no single answer to that. It's a little bit of economic factors, a little bit politic factors. Obviously, it's not our business to talk about the politics. But as far as we know, I mean, you know that we have an office in China and Hong Kong, and every day I'm talking to my operations team in China. And what we're facing right now is one of the reason, actually real reason with the business wise, there are a lot of container shipments from China or Asia to US or North America or Europe, but there's not enough shipments backwards. So basically, most of the containers you're shipping from Asia to US, the shipping lines, like the boats, they don't want to take empty containers back. So that's why most of the containers which come to US or North America, let's say, they don't go back as quick as before the pandemic. So this is one of the actual reason why we cannot actually find enough containers in China, in let's say in Europe, because most of those containers are not going back. So this is one of the reasons. Another reason is I think it's more about, most of the companies, they lost business in, let's say last year, February to May, with the worst part of during the pandemic. So those companies are trying to make more money, but the biggest problem is finding the equipment, which in freight equipment is the empty containers. So this is actually the biggest reason why we cannot basically, we want to get a space, but then the freight company, like those liners, they tell us like there's no empty container. So they cannot basically send the containers to us. They don't want to also depart before it's 100% loaded. So that's why there are also a lot of delays. So the delay is also causing this kind of mess, because then most of the vessels, they don't depart on time. They cannot enter the port on time. So they kind of lose the last 3 days. So they get like penalties, and they cannot unload on time. There are like some sort of congestions on the port. So that's why it takes longer time for them to enter the port, unload it. So they get also charged more by the ports. Like, let's say the busiest ports now is in Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, let's say. And last week I was in San Francisco to visit our warehouse in San Francisco. I saw myself there, at least like 15 to 20 full boats are waiting to enter the port. So this normally never happens, actually. So there are like some factors that actually is really causing the price increase, but there's also some not realistic price increase. I think it's due to the market conditions a little bit. Every sort of like chaos situation is actually helping some companies to make a lot of money, but actually suffer the rest of the company. So I think the situation is a little bit of both economic, real situation, as well as some part of the politic also, that companies kind of fighting to each other. So a little bit of everything, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Kind of that perfect storm of supply, demand, and price, what I would call price jacking.
Exactly.
So,
unfortunately. Yeah. But since we're entering the summer, this month normally in the business is kind of slows down, because most of the companies, they want to bring the actual, the big inventory before Christmas, or most of the companies place a big order before Chinese New Year, ship out everything. And then by the time it gets like May really slows down. And then until like August, September is still slow time, because most of the companies like increase their quantities for the fourth quarter, and they don't get like ready before the most like August and September, let's say. But now it's the highest price in the entire year. Actually, this year the it has never been this high before May. So I think it's also like the people are coming back, from pandemic. People are really tired of, not doing anything, travel. So they start buying more. This is also the fact that the demand has not been decreased for most of the Amazon sellers. Still, like, sales is pretty good for May, June, July season. So that's why I think we keep receiving more product. And a lot of retailers also turning into their businesses to the online. So this is also another reason I think last year the retail didn't do really much business, and most of the people now are trying to digitalize their business, focus on online, Walmart, Etsy, Amazon. So that's also another fact, I think. I'm sure you guys hear that a lot too. A lot of retailers, actually, physical stores, they close and then they start focusing on the online businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that, and I think that dovetails pretty nicely into my next question. For any of our listeners that are selling on Amazon right now, they are most likely running into inventory restrictions. And I can personally say I'm getting a couple gray hairs, and some of my hair's falling out from these Amazon inventory restrictions. And so, typically the model would be you place an order with your Chinese supplier, you generate shipping labels, put it on a boat or plane, and it arrives at Amazon warehouses. And now we can't do that, right? We can't even generate shipping labels. And so my question to you is, what are the smart Amazon sellers doing to combat this?
Unfortunately, a lot of people are facing this. A lot of my friends, a lot of our customers. The only way I think doing it, the last thing probably you want to do is ship your products by air. It's extremely expensive now. Shipping from any large international airport in China or Hong Kong or Taiwan, Korea to US is something about $8 to $10, and then there's still like quite a bit of a waiting time. The schedule has not been back to normal, most of the air companies. And so in order to actually save some money and cost, the best thing to do is actually using a prep center wherever you guys are shipping. If your main market is US, then it's better to work with the West Coast prep centers or the warehouses. If you're doing it, UK, Europe, you also need to have like a warehouse servicing, I think, because there you have two options. Number one, you can produce your products and ask your supplier to store them in the warehouse in China or in Asia. And then once you have new limits, then you can ship out. But since Amazon is going to let you ship out like only certain amount of quantity until you ship it by sea, the time it gets to the Amazon warehouse, you're already running out of stock. So probably that's the last thing you want to do as an Amazon seller. So that's why I highly recommend to produce enough quantity, and even if you don't have Amazon labels, ship those quantities to the warehouses where is your main market, and then keep it there active stock. And then as much as Amazon is letting you to ship in, then you send in partially, like 5 cartons, 10 cartons, 2 pallets, whatever you will be able to do. Another thing actually right now of Chinese suppliers is want to receive like larger orders. For most of the people now, the expanding to the new markets is an important opportunity actually to, start selling in different markets. So instead of maybe focusing only on one market, it's also a good idea to start selling international. And you will receive you will give more orders to your factories, and then basically you can drop your cost a little bit on inventory side. Obviously it requires more cash flow, maybe more people to manage the business in different marketplaces, but I think it's also important for most of the people to start looking into the new markets. Especially US is getting very, very competitive. So still there are some markets like less competitive, and shipping to those markets are also, for some people, is a challenge. But we have a way to solve that issue, especially in UK and Europe. We actually, as a Force-Get Logistics, we are digitalizing our website right now, where you can track your shipments online. That's a very important, I think, for most of the Amazon sellers, to track their shipments online and see where is the shipment, when it's gonna go in, when it's gonna arrive, what is the update status of the UPS and FedEx if you ship it by small parcels. And also we have a warehouse in California, which is in Tracy, San Francisco, that where we receive the products and store it and then ship it on behalf of you to Amazon. We apply the UPS or Amazon labels, either ship it like SPD, small cartons, or we can do pallet shipments by truck. So if anybody needs this kind of service or requirements, people can visit like Forescat.com or reach me out on sales@forescat.com. We'll be happy to help out with the storage and as well as international shipments.
Absolutely. And we'll post links to all of that in the show notes. One thing I do want to elaborate on and how we're, just for purposes of full transparency, both Ken and I are working with you right now with your Tracy, California warehouse. And just to our listeners, how we're utilizing that is we'll order, say, 5,000 units from our China warehouse, but Amazon will not let us send anything in. And so, or they'll say only let us send in 500 units. And so what we're doing is we are shipping to California, and we like having our goods on U.S. soil. That way, as these inventory restrictions lift, we can take pieces of those 5,000 units, say 1,000, and send them in to Amazon warehouses, kind of trickle in that inventory. And so one advantage on having it on U.S. soil is, you're a week and a half or 2 weeks out. Whereas when the goods are still in China, say sitting in storage at your supplier, if it's something that you ship by boat, you're 8 or 10 weeks out. And so that's what we did when we couldn't generate labels. We just decided to ship them to your warehouse. And it's something that I think is going to help us navigate through this messy landscape.
Exactly. I think the only issue, David, you would agree with me, hopefully, that for some sellers, the cash flow, because once you ship out everything from China, most of the Chinese factories are asking you to make an upfront payment. So I think it's also a good idea. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what is the best way to negotiate with the suppliers to maybe become like a better partner with them, so that they don't ask 100% upfront shipment. Because let's say you manufacture 5,000 units, and maybe Amazon is going to let you send them in 2 months, let's say, after it arrived to California, right? And you're looking at 30 days C shipment. So basically what you're looking at, let's say after you ship them into Amazon, you sell them, and then Amazon pays you in 15 to, let's say, 30 days. What you're looking for is actually 120 days, almost a cash flow circle. And plus you need to maybe place a new order in the next level, because, maybe it's a seasonal product, maybe it's Christmas is coming. So it's also very important for companies to manage this, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two comments I have, I agree with you. The two comments I have is one rule of thumb that I apply when negotiating with suppliers is if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yes.
I've never had a supplier come to me and say, hey, just because I'm a nice guy, I'm going to give you better terms, right? And so I also think that because the markets are kind of messy right now, right? Like it's putting myself in the shoes of a Chinese supplier, they know that there's supply chain disruptions. They know that there are issues with Amazon warehouses, and this is a good time to ask, right? And you have a good reason. Your example, you could say, listen, I would send these products right into Amazon warehouses, but I have to use a third-party warehouse, and that's tying up my cash. Could we extend my terms by 30 days? And they may say yes, they may say no. But again, if you don't ask, you don't get. And then, kind of the last thing would be if you have access to a line of credit, this may be a good time to tap into that to help you fund that cash flow shortage, because in the physical products business, you need to have physical products. And so if you're running out of stock, that's going to hurt your ranking. And so if you have a 20% profit margin on your goods and you can have a line of credit that's 5 or 6%, you're still profitable if you're drawing on it. And a line of credit generally is like a short-term financing mechanism, so it's a nice tool to use to bridge that gap.
I think I think he's spot on. This is an excellent time to ask for better terms because the market's hosed right now. And one other thing is, once those extra terms say we're going to extend it 30 days, 60 days, whatever, like that's not, it shouldn't go backwards, right? Like that should be in place moving forward in perpetuity until you're not doing business anymore. So take advantage of the timing now for a future business. One other question I had, Burak, is you mentioned earlier, like kind of like international expansion. Now, are you seeing shipments from, let's say you're sourcing out of South America or Europe and shipping into the US? Are there a lot of logistics problem with those, or it's just shipments from China?
Most of the thing, like for example, we have a couple of good customers. They're shipping from Turkey, and especially they're in the textile business. Actually, the situation in some of the European countries are like, let's say Turkey, India is worse because China takes the big part of the cake. Like, they take the big pie. So unfortunately, there's actually sometimes it takes 3 to 4 weeks to load a normal full container in countries like Turkey or in Hungary. We have a customer in Ukraine that he is shipping some it's some product, I don't remember now. It took us like almost 2-3 weeks to confirm only the space. Most of the companies, they don't even offer price. They say, okay, we're just going to book the container if we can, and then if you accept the price, then you continue with that. If not, we're not going to give you the space. And I'm like, hey, we cannot just like close our eyes and get the price and then let us like let us basically like become a millionaire. You cannot do that basically. So it's like a black market, some of the parts. So still, like, at least China has like faster shipping times. We don't need to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks to find a container. Some of the product even now cheaper than the container price itself. There are a lot of like marble products, like limestones, like natural stones are coming from Italy, from Turkey. A full container costs like 10,000, and whatever they put inside that costs $7,000-8,000. So basically, the container, the freight is like higher, and then it's also a big risk, for freight companies, because let's say you have a customer with like 20-30 container shipment per month. And it used to be only like, let's say $50,000 to $60,000. Now it's only almost cost like $300,000. So a lot of freight companies now not offering anymore that much of generous payment term. So, in previous example, we were thinking to asking the Chinese suppliers to offer us a longer payment term, 30 days, 60 days. Actually, most of the companies 2 years ago, they used to offer, like, they used to get the raw material in the local market with 30, 60 days payment term. Now, most of those suppliers, they have to pay cash for most of the products to take it. One of my customer suppliers delivering the goods in, let's say, 180 days. And they say, if you want us to deliver in 120 days, the price is 30% higher. It's an automotive part. I'm sure you guys heard about the chip shortage. That a lot of car manufacturers, they have to stop production, and the cost of that to the market is $110 billion. They think that by the end of this year. So it's a massive number that who knows where that money goes to. So when it comes to the question, still like shipping from Asia, like from China to Europe and US is better than actually shipping from South America and Europe, because those countries, they need to wait the containers to arrive, and then they can find empty containers to ship it back. So it is a little bit messy right now, and it seems in the short term those companies, they don't want things get any better. So so they can like charge really high price. As you said, like boats are not disappeared yet, so nobody knows why the prices increased 400%, not like 20-30% increase we're talking about like last 12 months, 300 to 400%, which is insane, I think.
Yeah, that is insane. As we talk about these price increases, crazy high price increases, the one thing that does give me a little bit of hope is that this is not an event that's only happening to us, right? It's happening to everybody. Shipping is expensive for everybody. And so, I think like in most businesses, the more efficient you can be, if you can be more efficient than your competitors, you're going to win. And so I want to talk about, in your opinion right now, what are the most efficient ways to ship to the US? And I'll share a brief little story. We have a really lightweight product that we usually airship. It's no big deal. But when I called you, you said it was $11 a kilo. And the shipping on that would have been more than what we paid for the product. And so you recommended a strategy, and I'll let you get into that a little bit more. But my question is, what is the currently, as we sit here in the beginning of summer 2021, what's the most efficient way to ship to the US?
David, definitely, some people, they still have the urgency. They still need to use the air freight, and it really hurts their margin. I know some of the people, just in order to, because they didn't plan the inventory management well. That's another thing. What you said is, I think the smarter companies who manage their inventory. I mean, if you talked about 2 years ago, probably you would be talking more about like the listing, the pictures, the A content, the rating, the reviews. You'll be talking more about that. Most of the people now, they're talking about how to manage their inventory, how to stay on active stock, how to ship on time, what is the best way, or where to store their products. So I think this is getting more and more crucial for companies. Like, it's more and more important. So if it is large product, let's say I have a customer, like they have like a 3 pounds, 4 pounds, and they try to ship by air, it's costing them $22 to $25 to get to the Amazon, which is ridiculous because their sales price like $35. But they had to do it in order to stay in competition. And when it comes to of course the ocean freight is still the cheapest. So what we do for our customer, mostly if they have this is one thing that what we did for you, for example, we basically collect different customers' shipments and then put them in one full container and ship it directly to our warehouse. That way people can really save money and save time. When it comes to now, I think the biggest problem is there are a lot of problem in connections. So most of the people, they think that you just load the container, let's say in Shanghai, and then it comes to Los Angeles straight. But it normally doesn't work out that way. If you especially ship your product in smaller port, let's say, give an example from China, Dalian, like Hubei or Qingdao, some of these cities, they don't have a direct service. So basically, shipping inland those containers by truck from Shanghai to, for example, Qingdao, or from Shenzhen to Qingdao, might take like 3 to 4 days, and the cost is maybe $2,000 dryage, which is so expensive. So what we do is we load the container to a boat in a small port. It goes to an international port, unloads and loads again. So most of the people think that there are direct services, correct? But most of I would say like 60 to 70% of the shipments, they have connections, or they have a stopover, they're changing the routes, or the vessels, the boats have mechanic problems. Recently, we had a couple of issues of congestion. So the schedule changed. So there are also a lot of delays now. So when it comes to offering the pricing, most of the people in the market, they hear slow sea and fast sea shipments, DDP service, which is the fast sea, most of the time we are using for a special a vessel company that they have their own part of the port in North America, let's say in Oakland or Los Angeles, and the custom clearance is also faster, and they have the direct service. Some of the shipments, they have a connection recently there are a lot of connections in Korea. From Korea, even if it's shipped from China, it stops in Korea and then comes to US. Most of the people might think, why my shipment goes to Korea first and then comes to US? It's just the way of scheduling those boats. And unfortunately, there are a lot of delays happening. So when it comes to the most efficient way, the ocean is the best option right now. Make sure that you book or you inform your freight forwarder in advance. I would say at least 2 weeks before your shipment gets ready, because the prices change daily and space is maybe sold out even 3 weeks from today. So if you wait till the last minute, that's the last thing you want to do. So the price is going to be really more expensive if you want to, inform your freight forwarder the last day, because they can't find a space and they will try to get a space for it from the black market, because most of the people wants to ship their product yesterday. So which is not really possible in our world right now. So inform your freight forwarder as early as possible, even when you have the production started, and then choose the best way and make sure you're ready for some delays, because almost we don't see any shipments arrives on time right now. And the biggest problem is there are a lot of boats are waiting outside of the port for the unloading. So in theory, the fast sea shipments expecting around arrive port to port and then custom clearance and then the Amazon warehouse or to our California warehouse, let's say it used to be like 25 days. Now the time changes according to obviously the boat schedule, and they'll slow sea around 35 days. So if you want to save cost, use this slow sea, but make sure you add 7 to 10 days something if something goes wrong. For the fast sea, the same way. So most of the people, once we offer the price, we tell them, hey, there can be some delays. Make sure you have your schedule according to that. But some people say, oh, I don't understand why there's a delay. So that's very important to schedule your shipments in advance, production in advance, especially before the last quarter. I mean, some people might think it's just May 20 why I talk about the last quarter, but trust me, from the June, July, you're going to start seeing the effect of production time. It's going to get like longer and longer. So if you don't have good enough cash flow, try to negotiate with your supplier and try to discuss like 10 to 15% deposit instead of 30. And if I were you, I would maybe the last year's number, not the best, but maybe look at the numbers from last year, what you guys sold or what's the market average selling number, and then try to manage your inventory according to that.
Yeah, so I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. So as you know, Burak, David and I, we're taking our brands into Europe. And for any of the, for anybody listening that's selling in international in Europe or thinking about it, what are the best ways to ship from, let's say, your suppliers from China to Europe? And I've heard.
We have some options now, railway, which I start to liking it more because it doesn't have the same amount of shipment as the ocean. If we're talking about, let's separate it to UK and Europe first of all. Canada is quite a long shipping time. So it's like 50 to 60 days almost. We had a conversation with David the other day. Sometimes shipping by sea to Canada, if you have a small shipment, it doesn't really make sense because it takes like almost 60 days to get there. So if you have a small shipment to Canada, because the Amazon has full capacity right now, you cannot ship that much of a quantity. We can also help you with the Canada warehouse. But if you have a small shipments to Canada, maybe consider the air shipments if you have the enough margin. For Europe, UK is you need to have the registration number with UK, the VAT number, in order to import. We can also help you to do that on behalf of you if you don't have it. So air price still like over $10 to UK. The sea shipment is the only cheapest option, which is more expensive than US. Let's say per kilogram, US is like $2.2 to $2.3 for fast sea. For UK, that price is almost close to $3 because there is not enough supply demand for UK. So it's more expensive. Takes around 35 to 40 days to ship to UK. If you want to start, if you're selling already in US and Canada, I think UK is one of the best places to start because it's in English language. You don't really need to change too much about the packing. You don't need to do too much about your listing. The customer service can be English. So I think the UK is one of the best market, and still like the shipping process is a little bit easier compared to the rest of Europe because of the different VAT number issue. So UK is a good market to start. The sea shipment is 35 to 40 days. The price is still not as cheap as US, but I think it's still good enough. When it comes to Europe, as I mentioned, now there's a rail option, which is almost 20 to 25 days to ship it to. But this is, of course, the rail I'm talking about only from China, and it's about like almost 20 to 25 days to ship it by rail. The price is close to $3, but there are less delays. Like, they schedule pretty well now, the train shipments. I like it. I offer most of my customer, if they sell in Europe, to use the railway. Obviously the sea shipment, roughly around like $2.5 price range, shipping to like Germany, France, roughly around like 30 to 35 days. So if you do rail, you'll have like less problem with the delays, and then the price is cheaper. So most of the companies don't offer this option yet, but I start to like it because it's kind of not discovered yet that well. So the prices are still more reasonable. I think people are start asking around like Dubai, like United Emirates. I don't know if you guys are thinking that's a good market or not. I think that's going to become also something people are paying attention. And I heard that Amazon is trying to expand. The market is in the Middle East and Africa. I don't know when we're going to see it. So I'm sure there's going to be an options also for those markets sometime soon.
Yeah, I've received some emails from Amazon. They've been pushing the Middle East, Dubai, and UAE quite a bit. So David, you got any follow-up questions, or Burak, is there anything else you want to cover that we didn't cover?
I think pretty much we talked about everything. I think the final, I think if we sum up, just make sure you guys are planning on time, everything with your factory. Make sure, there can be some delays about the freight. Amazon, you never know what happens. Make sure you have a plan B for last quarter to have a warehouse service wherever your main market is. I think that's going to be very crucial for companies to have that option. If you just you never know. I think I'm expecting something a little worse from Amazon for the last quarter. They can still play around. Maybe I think the last year they had similar things, like if you're a new seller, new SKU, you can even ship it. So if you have some planning to order or launch a new product, I think you got to be like careful with that. Don't play too big if it's a new SKU. You never know what's going to happen with Amazon. I think that's one thing that we can also add up.
Now, one thing I want to comment on before we get into the fire round is just in my 5 years experience of selling on Amazon, to be an expert in logistics, in my opinion, you need to be living in it every day, which is what you do, Burak. And so you may want to plug your ears on this one, because I don't want you to get a big head, but I can tell you it has been from booking my own freight to working with an actual expert, which is Forsket in you and your team. It makes life so much easier. And so I would say to our listeners, if you are self-booking freight, give Burak a shot. Give him one shot, see how it goes. I can promise you it'll be easier and you'll get a better result. And so anyway, tip of the hat to you and your team. Anyway.
Thank you, David.
All right. Ready for the fire round?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. What is your favorite book?
Man, right now I'm reading this Millionaires of Habits. We're trying to, we're expanding our business, the new freight, rebranding everything, new warehouse services. We're making better and better every day, and I think it's all about like being, having your own habits with work, making sure that you have the SOP. I think for Amazon sellers, I think that's very also important. Delegate the job, and more importantly, stay positive. Everything we talk about last 40 minutes, most of the people think that, wow, okay, you guys are not talking anything positive. We all talk about problems, but unfortunately, those are the things we are, facing. Like those are the problems, like the, storage limits, the warehouse services, the freight increasing. Everybody's like thinking about like, how to cover all those costs and everything. So this is the fact, but I think we're trying to stay positive. That's the most important thing to do. Act smart, and try to maybe, we're also trying to do that, like maybe divide your risk a little bit and then maybe expanding to new markets. I think for Amazon sales, I think it's a good idea. So I'm trying to develop more habits for myself and for my team. And most importantly, we launched last month, we launched our digital freight platform. So that makes our life very easy, and as well as our customers' life. So I think I agree with David, like give us a shot, and then I think you will not regret it.
Awesome. Just to wrap up the fire round, what are your hobbies?
Recently, my hobbies are dealing with the freight. That's pretty much every day what's happening with my life. But since I'm in Florida, man, going to the beach between the work is like to kind of the best thing, relaxing my mind and spending time with my dog. So that's like the best thing actually. Trying to disconnect a little bit with the phone and the screen time. I'm trying to reduce that. So it's a good thing, I think. Running and going to the beach with my dog, I think that's the best thing so far.
Very cool. All right, last one. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Man, I think the only way is you can make things perfect. Only the more you repeat, the better it gets. So I know, eventually if you make a mistake, you're gonna lose money. Most of the people, they try to enter Amazon or like e-commerce drop shipping with some small amount of savings, especially after the tough last year. But in my opinion, never stop asking to people who know. Listen as much as possible. But if you don't act, you don't learn from your mistakes. I mean, I made so many mistakes. I'm sure you guys did a lot of mistakes. We're talking before the podcast. Even so, I think the best thing is to do in some point, start and see how it goes, and then the more experience you have, and try to get into try to build up your social network. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, when I needed something about different things, I asked you guys like, hey Ken, what do you think about this? Even about our marketing strategy, guys, do you like this or you don't like this? Or David asking me, hey, bro, what do you think? Should I do air shipping? I'm like, no, David, don't do it. Do it with this way. So I think never be shy about asking, like, especially if you're a beginner, don't think, like, I think there's no stupid question. It's just, so don't worry about like, what people will think about me. Just start asking to the right people and because there are so many free community outside, and try to be part of it, and then just act it. And then even if you make a mistake, learn it, and then keep going. I think keep growing. I think that's the best thing we can do, especially after last year.
Barak, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today and share all of your logistic expertise. I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot out of it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken, for having me back, and David's also. And if you guys want to get some pricing or questions, even if you are a new seller, you can find, I think, the information. David's going to drop it off. So looking forward to hear back from your listeners, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you get a hold of Brock and his team, make sure to tell him that Firing the Man sent you. And maybe Brock will hook us up with some Foresket t-shirts or something like that. So
absolutely.
Anyway, well, thanks everyone for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.